We're going to get going, everybody. Please stand for the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Mr. Akiri?
Here.
Mr. Golga?
Here.
Mr. Bradsky?
Here.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Coyne? Mr. D'Elia?
Here.
Mr. Ford? Mr. Kane? Mr. Karam?
Here.
Mr. Mottola?
Here.
Ms. Sesney? Here. And Mr. Wallace? Okay.
Thank you. You have the draft December 18, 2017 minutes in your packet. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
A second?
Yep. Okay.
Any additions, corrections, deletions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Next, we have the election of officers. Always a dicey thing. If you'd like the officers to leave the discussion, we can do that.
Well, since you don't intend to go, I would like to propose the current slate of officers be considered for the next term.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Thanks for your comment.
Good work.
Alrighty.
Then I can take all my lawn signs down now?
Next is a resolution establishing the MVWA as lead agency pursuant to SECRA. I'll leave that with you, Dick.
Thank you, Chairman. The next resolution under Agenda Item 5 and also under Agenda Item 6, resolutions, are related to the raw water main project up in Prospect, the town of Russia, the 3 miles of new pipeline between the dam and the treatment plant that we have in the planning stages. What we're doing at this point is closing out tonight the State Environmental Quality Review Act process, the SECRA process for the pipeline. Nothing here commits the board to undertaking the project or any financing. It really clears the way for us to go out for some additional funding, do some additional studies for the projects. We've already completed this for the Pipe Bridge project, for which we have funding. This is the rest of the pipeline. Back in December, the board authorized us to send out basically the initial notification to any involved agencies that would have an approval role in the project, basic project information, and the board's intention, unless somebody has an issue with it, to act as lead agency to make this secret determination of impact or no impact. 30 days passed. We did hear from a couple agencies. No one had either a problem with the board acting as lead agency or identified any significant environmental issues. So what we have, the first resolution is basically the board establishes itself as lead agency for making the determination. The next resolution under 6 is the board issuing basically a finding of no significant impact. And the documents supporting that are included. We will send a notice out to the environmental news bulletin, although technically for this level we don't have to, just to close the loop on it. But like I said, it really finishes up the environmental review. Still a lot of permitting and meetings and approvals with the DOT, DOH, Department of Health, and the DEC, of course, on this. It doesn't stop any of the permitting, but basically it allows us to move on to those further phases. So the first one is for the board to establish itself as lead agency.
Dave,
I'll make a motion. Second.
any further discussion regarding this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you.
And the second one is for, now that you're lead agency, you're legally authorized to accept Part 2 and 3 of the EAF and also issue the negative declaration.
So inclined to make the motion as presented. Thanks, Vince. Second?
I'll make it.
Thank you. Any discussion or comments on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Next up, approval quarterly investment statement ending December 31, 2017.
Yes, in your booklet is the fourth quarter of the year. So you have, on the sheet, you have all 4 quarters. You have total interest earned for the year, and any expenses related to those investments. Public Authority law requires that we provide you a quarterly statement of investment balances, earnings, and any expenses. If you look on the last page, the earnings for the year exceeded what the budget was, so that's a good thing. We budgeted $225,000, we ended up earning about $245,000.
Hey, Jim,
Yes.
there's a couple on here. I think it's the 000 series bonds, the Bank of America repurchase agreement. We're getting 513.
Yeah.
How long is that? Is that locked in for?
That's perpetual for the,
Really?
yeah,
That's a
yeah.
good deal. And then the other one is on the Series 15 series bonds, the 464 on U.S. Treasuries. Those are Treasury bills.
Which one are you looking at?
It's on the next, right on the next page. It's under 015 series bonds,
Okay.
and we're getting 464 on the Treasury bills.
Sorry.
It's just double sided.
I was looking for it.
Is that locked in for a while, or?
Yeah, they're
Is that debt service reserve fund, Jim?
2015 series bonds.
So,
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, those are
Mine got
locked
cut
in,
off.
yeah.
Locked in for the life of the bonds.
Yeah, those are the reserve money that's sitting there, yeah.
That's good.
Yep.
We're required to hold that debt service reserve account for the life of the bonds, so we can afford to prove the long-term investment.
Yeah.
Liquidity is not really an
Right.
issue with those.
The only time that we would have to break that is if we liquidated the reserve money, which we did at one point for the 2000,
99, just.
yeah, one of
Well,
them.
those two right there with the smaller balances, those are the ones that really had to be
Right.
that budget number.
Right.
Those are, I didn't even think we had rates that high anymore in the world.
No, we don't, we don't right now.
The holding those are kind of,
Not
not very happy, right?
Come on now.
No, the only other, right, the only other item, you'll see there's a new item there right at the bottom. That was some financing that we did as part of the budget. We went out to finance some equipment. So we got about $700,000 in, paid that out. The balance that's remaining there at the end of December is $120,000. I think we just paid for a dump truck. So there's about $20,000 currently in there.
Anything else for Jim? We need a motion to approve this, Jim?
Yes.
Yes.
Second? Thanks. Any further comments or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Finance, anything else, Jim?
Other than, since we didn't meet last month, you have the year-end statement, I think you have the first month of the next year. But if you have any questions on that, was that, you wrote in there?
Yes, they are.
Okay. A couple of items that's interesting is we were up 7.7 million cubic feet this year, which is a huge change from the previous years. So it looks like we hit bottom in the previous years and we're going back up. Even though the number of customers really didn't change overall. So that's a good thing, and revenue was up about 400,000 compared to the previous year. So we took in $23.5 million in cash for our services. We paid out to maintain the system $23.4 million, about $150,000. So you know, that was a good thing, and I was going to mention that. Let me see here, a couple of items. Of that 23.5 million, 21.4 million was for water sales. So you had about another 2 million for other charges, penalties, other fees that we charge. Pilots, 1.37 million. Debt service, 6.5 million. Payroll with benefits, about 7.8 million. So those are numbers that we look at from year to year.
Any questions for Jim?
Just on the, I know I've probably heard this before, but on page 4, just the, where we show the variance from budget to actual, well, we're showing it from cash basis to accrual, right? That's really, I mean, we go by the accrual, don't we?
We do. That's why, for instance, a big thing is we budget on a cash basis for debt service. We're only showing the interest. The other piece of that is reduction of principal. So that's why you're going to see a big variance budget to actual,
It's probably
among other things.
Yeah, it's almost a little bit more, well, I don't want to say accurate, but it's a better comparison. I think if you just compare the January to January on the accrual side, you know,
Yeah.
at least see if there's, how far off we are, you know, we were off from the prior year.
Right. I mean, we're always looking actual to actual, and you can see where there
Yeah.
are changes.
Anything else? Anything else, anybody? Thanks, Jim. Pat?
Okay, thank you. Couple quick things. One of the things Jim hit on is that our consumption and our revenue is looking pretty good. Part of that at least, and we're gonna run some calculations to try to figure out how much, but part of that is the fact that we've been changing a lot of meters. And industry average, when you take a meter that's more than 15 years old or so, put a new one in, you're gonna see somewhere between 6 and 8% revenue recapture. As meters age, they let a little bit of water slip through on low flows. So we know that the amount of money that we've invested in both doing the AMI system and ongoing meter replacements outside of the AMI system, we've invested more than $10 million on our metering, including the AMI collection system. Some of that is, a lot of that is new meters. For a while, we were doing anywhere between 2,000 and 3,000 meters a year. And so some of the consumption stabilization, I think, is due to having an up-to-date meter population. But one of the things I've asked Jim and our IT department to take a look at is trying to figure out exactly how much revenue we've recaptured, because as we make some more public statements about the near completion of AMI, we're at about 99.8% right now. There's just a couple hundred meters we still need to get in and change out. We want to talk a little bit about what a great project it is and what we're doing, but I also will be sending information both to the City of Utica and to Oneida County, which I'll copy all of you on, just indicating that the project's been very successful. And by the way, our investment in all these meters has done an enormous shot in the arm financially for both the city sewer fund and the county sewer fund. And they were not asked to participate in those investments, but they certainly got a nice benefit from it. And I think, you know, it wouldn't hurt to make them aware of the fact that, you know, their sewer revenues have been protected, at least by what we've been doing here. And I just think it's a good partnership. We ought to highlight it. So as that information becomes available, I'll copy on all of that to you as well when it goes out to them. Another thing I want to mention is that and I can't remember if we covered this in December. I know we didn't meet in January. The City of Utica was awarded money for lead pipe replacements. And it kind of sprung about because of somewhat of a casual conversation between somebody in the mayor's administration and the health department. They called and said, would you guys be interested in talking about lead service line replacements? And naturally they said, well, yeah, sure. So the next thing they knew, the city was listed as a recipient of $650,000. And when it ended up in the paper from a press release from the state health department, even the city was caught off guard a little bit because no notice was given to the city ahead of time. We weren't notified, so the media was calling up and none of us knew anything about it. We did get to the bottom of it eventually, and we've had 2 good meetings downstairs. But last week there was a conference call so that the health department could explain how the program works. And what we figured out on a call was, of the 25 or 30 or so recipients, it seems like we were the only one where the recipient and the water purveyor are not the same entity. And so the rest were municipal systems where they get the money and it's their system. Here it's a little different. So I've had some follow-up discussion with Sonny downstairs, Sonny Greco, to talk a little bit about that. And we may We may want to explore trying to rearrange the way that the program is structured coming out of the state, just to make it easier. One of the drawbacks would be that with the money flowing through the city, it adds an extra layer, and those costs have to be upfronted and then wait to get reimbursed. That could place a little bit of a financial burden on the city. So we're going to sit and talk about all that. There may be some possibility where we might want to come back to you folks and talk about having the state re-award that if that's even possible. We would probably streamline it and make it easier to just administer the program.
Isn't it possible for the cities just to contract with us?
Yeah.
So the grant is to them and
Yeah,
they can.
so those are the things we're gonna talk about, yeah. But we'd be doing all the work on our side of it,
Right.
and then hire the contractors, they need to get paid up front. It's a little complicated, and when there's two entities involved, we'll just have to figure out how that's gonna get structured. We haven't really figured that out yet. But there's a 2-year window to get the work done. And you can't spend more than 50% of the money in the first year. So we got some logistics just to work out. But we'll keep you up to date as that unfolds, and eventually there'll be some public statements about it, I'm sure.
Any ideas on how much pipe that will replace that 600,000?
Pardon me?
How much pipe that'll replace that 600?
The average lead service pipe's probably gonna be between $3,000 and $4,000 to change out. If we keep administrative overhead to the bare minimum, it's a pretty easy thing to figure out. What is that, 200 maybe?
Are we talking about the box to the house or the?
Well, in some
pipe
cases,
to
the whole thing. It depends. If we've done our side and they're gonna do their side, that's great. If the whole thing is lead, then we really should do the whole thing at once. It's actually worse to do half of it and leave
On
the
private
other piece.
property?
Well, the contractors would have to do that. We would do from the curb stop back to the main. So we're gonna end up doing a little bit of work on this. But restoration costs are all covered. We can also charge our labor against the grant and get and reimburse ourselves. So, those are all the things we have to figure out what we're gonna do with it. But, everything from restoration, even administrative costs, staff time, is all reimbursable under the grant. But obviously, the idea is to maximize the number of services we can get rid of and not chew up 40% of the grant with our overhead. So, as I say, we'll be sitting down with the city and trying to figure out the most efficient way to move this forward. And then I'll let you all know how we move ahead with that.
In the past, we always had the homeowner do their side,
Right,
and we did ours.
right.
So if people find out we're doing the whole thing, like you said, in some cases,
Right.
that could open up a can of worms.
Well, the question is, who's going to apply? How do we award it? Those are all questions that need to be answered. Because there's not enough money to go around and serve everybody.
Right. So,
What about,
so-
I'm just curious, because I don't know, I know it's the service area. What if we go back to the main, and that main is,
Well, there's no lead on the main itself. It's only on a service pipe. So, it would stop at the water main. But we have some criteria we could use to try to prioritize who gets it and doesn't. But the idea is to be able to do this and have homeowners reap the benefit, to go all the way into the meter. How we do that, we just have to figure out. But at some point, I already talked to Sonny about setting a meeting up later this week downstairs. So once we get a little more logistics, hopefully we'll be able to let you know how we're going to run this program.
This only goes to the meter, this doesn't take care of any pipes inside the houses?
Doesn't cover internal plumbing, brass faucet fixtures, you name it. So is it a 100% solution? No. And it also discounts the fact that we have a very successful corrosion control program in place.
Where does the water main fall in relation to the sewer lateral on a property?
Well, by law, there's supposed to be at least a 10-foot offset. I'm sure that's not always the case.
The older homes,
It's hard.
a lot of times you'll find them in the same ditch.
Yeah.
So,
The reason I was thinking that if we go replace the service line, you damage the lateral, I'm not sure.
it's a possibility.
A lot of them are pretty iffy at best.
Start digging around.
Which is why you want private contractors with their insurance and performance bonds, and that way we're not on the hook for those kinds of damages. At least on the inside, at least past the curb. Yeah.
Well, that maybe our lawyer would know better, but we're the big pocket.
Yeah.
The contractor's not the big pocket.
Right,
So
right.
it doesn't matter about
Right.
who we think should be sued.
Right. So this is
But you have-
this is all in an early stage.
You'd have some type of performance bond, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
With whoever.
With the
whoever
private
the
contractor. So, at any rate, again, there's a lot of details to work out. Once we have some kind of framework that we think is workable, we'll bring that back to this board and take a look at. because this board needs to authorize.
He needs something to do, he hasn't been.
As a project. Another thing I want to mention is that our senior staff, Dick and others, and Phil, have been working pretty diligently on reviewing our rules and regulations as they currently appear on our website and our booklet. Another 2 months, maybe? 90
Oh,
days?
no, yeah, before that.
90 days?
Yeah.
We'll be hopefully bringing back some revisions to our rules and regulations.
Comprehensive update.
Yeah, hasn't been done in a long time. The only thing is that if there are any recommended changes in fees, what we'll need to decide is whether we put that off to the next budget or whether we want to have a hearing on that and actually change the fees mid-year. So it depends what they are, how much of a change it is, and what kind of financial impact that makes on our budget. But we will be bringing back the revised rules and regs that we've been out to everybody well ahead of time. If anybody wants to spend some time, we can even organize a workshop so that you can come in and talk about the logistics of what's in it. But a lot of the language is outdated. It was 20, 30 years old. A lot of it inherited, some longer, no doubt. So we're just trying to modernize the rules and regs to fit today's operation of our utility and construction practices and everything else.
If you're gonna be looking at fees, it would be interesting to do a survey of the water systems in the state, particularly related to capturing the cost of credit cards on payments. I'd be interested in knowing if bringing it to the board or not, what other systems are doing. And if there was some survey that you might be able to do, maybe piggyback on another one I talked to Jim about, but it would be nice to know what others are doing. We know what the city of Utica does, but I'm more interested in the water systems or sewer systems, utility.
But does the city of Utica have control over charging, or they have to charge? When you pay taxes on a credit card, I think from what I was told, you have to, they don't have the ability to waive that.
To say no?
I don't think so. That's, at least, that's why I thought I understood it.
And again, it's still, it's a municipal government. I'd be interested in knowing what the other providers of sewer and water services, even solid waste, I mean, those are all fees now. What are the other authorities, what are the other collectors doing? We're within a couple of years when it'll become real money. And it's essentially what we're doing are the people that are charging are underwriting the cost of some things that other people aren't. And, you know, when it was 50,000, it was one thing. It was 100,000, it's another thing. It's gonna get to $250,000, and now we're talking a percentage on the rate, so.
Well, I think once the thing to compare it to is to see the type of activity you're getting on who's using the credit card. So if, you know, we still use lockbox, I take it, right?
Yes.
Right? Lockbox fees are pretty steep.
Yep.
So who knows if that would end up offsetting it, you know?
Yeah, that's true. But we need, I think it's something, we can't discuss it without knowing what people are doing. you know.
Got to get a history of that.
I can even do a national survey through an organization called AMWA, which is the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies. They do member-to-member inquiries, so we can find out what, you know, water systems across the country are doing with that too.
Just good information.
Yeah. Speaking of AMWA, good segue, thank you. Next month, the monthly board meeting will be March 19th. I am currently scheduled to be in Washington DC at an AMWA conference. It's their spring water policy conference. So it's in DC, and the bulk of the speakers are either EPA administrators from different divisions or a variety of elected officials from the House of Representatives and the Senate. This year, I think there's 2 senators speaking, 3 or 4 members of Congress, and a slew of people from the EPA. And it's all about pending legislation, new policy that's coming out, the lead and copper rule, a whole range of things, water infrastructure financing with you. So I'll be down there and looking into this. But the thing I wanted to mention is that I tentatively have an appointment set up to meet with our congressional representative, Congresswoman Tenney, to talk about any kind of funding that might become available through the National Water Infrastructure Funding is being talked about. There's some pretty large numbers that are being thrown out there right now in budget proposals. And I have spoken with her a couple times now over the last few months about trying to get some infrastructure money for us. I think she would be eager to give it a try. So I'll be bringing down a request packet and hopefully meeting with her. Tentatively, she said she'll be there in we have it as a scheduled date, so if nothing comes up and she doesn't get called to the floor for something, then obviously I'll still leave her staff. But we'll put a request in for funding and we'll see what happens. With a little luck, maybe we'll get something out of the federal government for the first time. So, unless there's any other questions for me, I'll leave it at that. We can turn it over to these three guys from NBC News over here.
We're ready, Pat.
Great, thank you. Okay, so you're all aware that back last year in mid-year, we made a transition with our water treatment plant to go to a third party to operate, Suez. And these gentlemen were all in here at that time talking about their proposal, which we then voted on and accepted. And you folks on the board were eager to get an update at the 6-month mark. And they were very happy to come in and discuss it. So tonight we have Jason O'Brien, Mike Park, and John Arnett from Suez, and they're going to walk us through a little bit of information on their experiences. Phil, is there anything that you want to add on the introduction side?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
We'll let them take off from there.
Great.
And then I can fill in if we need some questions.
Listed as executive session?
Yeah, that was an error. There's nothing here that we deemed sensitive. And John, by the way, is our full-time plant manager on site. He's there every day. Mike came in from Massachusetts. Jason's up from Connecticut. So welcome back.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
It's truly been a good partnership, I think, in the past 6 months. I'm the regional manager. I was the one here to talk about Suez and our proposal and everything that we have to offer. I thought it would be nice today for you to hear from the employees that are actually living here at your facilities, and we put together an update. I know we had a certain type of window, but if you have questions about other things, we kind of structured it around our mobilization efforts and what it's like to do a mobilization here with this project, and then focused on some things we've done with health and safety, environmental compliance, asset management when it comes to the maintenance management of your systems, and then into some optimization efforts that we've been working with the authority on as well. So with that, I'll kick it over to Mike.
My name is Mike Burke, area manager for Suez in the New England area. I oversee several plants, Mohawk Valley being one of them, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. I'll get right into the presentation. All right, so 7 months now we started, August 1st, 2017. Preliminary activities, site assessments, task identification began on June 19th, 2017, which was the day the board voted to accept the contract. 425 tasks were identified throughout the transition, and assigned to or named to as a resource. There's 14 tasks at a summary level, which I'll point out on the next page of the next screen. 34 individuals have provided startup support from a few hours to several person weeks of effort. For example, our CMS system that we're putting in at the plant has had individuals there since day one, and they're still there today, hopefully finishing up this month. Significant on-site search team efforts during the first 6 weeks, 90-person days. We had several people from several different areas of Suez in the facility going over different Suez policies, safety policies, looking at the current policies that were in place, reviewing and updating them as they went. This is the project overview. Transition pretty much 81% complete. You can see the different stages. Everything's pretty much complete, a lot of 100% completes. The smallest one in the end there, 10%, is basically ongoing. It's sustainability of what we put into place, and will be measured each day, which will apply our staff. Feel free to jump in, John. Something. Mobilization completion status by phase. Phase 1 status, 97.3% complete. The portion that's not complete of that is actually the internet access. We had some technical difficulties, I'll say, in getting certain companies. We went through Verizon, what was it, Charter, Spectrum. Now we're going to go with Northland. Yeah, Northland, a local contractor. So that's moving ahead. Phase 2 status, 83.5% complete. We're still waiting, the CMS is being built. We have to, once we get the internet in, we'll be able to transfer SCADA over to Suez from the authority. So that's that 15 to 18% missing there. Phase 3 status, we're just getting into that at this point. Safety program accomplishments. We developed a 24-hour Suez incident reporting response line, which is basically a hotline. If anything happens within the facility or within our area of work, every employee is empowered to call it what we call a hotline. And that hotline triggers different statuses. It goes to different levels of management from the top down, and everybody gets involved to help handle the problem. It's good because you don't have one individual trying to think of how to handle one situation. So, we implemented emergency chemical safety procedures. One of the main ones was the chlorine gas and the stacking of the chlorine cylinders. We basically eliminated that, and that was a pretty big safety hazard. It took some doing trying to figure out the logistics of how to move the tanks around because they're kind of confined with the constraint of the space that's there at the facility. Created an emergency response plan. As me and John were talking earlier, it's not really a small response plan. It's a book that we've gone through extensively. We had our EH&S here from the week before, actually, started June 19th, right up until day one, and then still ongoing after.
Emergency responses,
Right on cue.
Again, we identified some various unsafe conditions or work practices. One of the biggest ones was the chlorine gas 1-ton cylinders and the movement of them and things like that. We integrated a safe work planning process where each individual doing non-routine tasks within the facility. We have a sheet. You go through individual steps, what the task entails, what hazards you're up against, whether it be weather, ergonomics, lockout, tagout, anything like that. And it gives the opportunity for all the employees to look at this one task and come up with different ideas of how to do it differently and find things that were possibly unsafe that they didn't notice before. So it's a group effort. This is in the beginning we look at it, and then at the end of the job we look at it again to see if anything can be improved. And if that task comes up again in the future, we look at it again. So it's makes you take a step back and look at the big picture of what's going on there. Then you can see Gabe signing off on lifesaver rules for Suez. And John's back. Environmental regulatory and compliance. John, I can let you go through this if you want.
So we have an OCD, on-site compliance document. It's kind of our cheat sheet, so to speak. Everything from contract, regulatory DOH stuff, down to any kind of daily operations. So if a regulator comes in and says, hey, what's this? How do you do this? Where are these numbers? I've got binders on my desk and everything's marked out. Here's how you do it. Here's where you find it. Again, regulatory requirements. We have our schedules. I'm just going to jump down to Hawk WIMS. That's our system that we use. So in there we have dates, we have values, we have everything. From our daily samples, our monthly, our yearly, everything's kind of logged in there. So that way it's our way to check internally. Mike can access Jason, pretty much anyone in the company can look at it and double check. Key compliance. New York State, we have the underground storage tanks. I was actually licensed last year as an A operator, so along with Kim and Frank. So we're able to comply with New York State's regulations on the storage for like oil tanks, because we have bulk storage there. The laboratory audit was very comprehensive. We have a huge staff that loves to come in, go over all this kind of stuff. We have SOPs, how to do, again, pretty much everything. Daily samples, monthly samples, all that kind of stuff. Which leads into the extensive training. So we have, again, Hot WIMS, huge for us, that is actually working right now in conjunction with Ops 10, Operator 10. That's what was already in place at the plant when we came in. again, it's just really adding on to all the procedures, making sure that it's up to not only your standards, our standards, state standards.
One good thing too about Hawk WIMS is not only does John look at it and I can take a look at it on a monthly basis, weekly basis, what have you, but others within Suez take a look at it as well, and they send out weekly reports, monthly reports. So if there's something outstanding, whether it be a regulatory requirement or samples that need to be taken, it jumps out, and the tickers are sent to everybody to make sure that it gets taken care of. So
Assets. So this is a big one again for us, the CMMS, which was talked about earlier. We're up to about 835 assets, so that's almost double what was originally listed. We came in, so that's just the more stuff we're looking at right now. We want to really get down to the nitty-gritty, understand every part of everything. So we've developed 420 preventative predictive maintenance strategies. Along with that, we also have the critical parts inventory, so that way we know exactly what we have, exactly what's very important to have, and know that we have enough of it. There's the baseline conditions, so we have 97% of the assets scored good or very good. That's awesome. I mean, it's the 3%, it's little things here or there. It's not poor, it's not bad, it's just it didn't score good, very good. In conjunction with that, we have the calculating the condition base life and estimated replacement costs. It's important just to know where we stand. The plant was built in operational in '92, so some stuff's pretty old. We want to know exactly how good it's been kept and what it's going to cost to replace it. We want to do like a whole, keep it going until the end, replace it now, understand where we're at. We actually conducted a risk workshop with Phil a couple weeks ago. We had some staff come in from this program. We went pretty much line by line. Everything having to do with the plant. We wanted to know where we feel its risk is versus where we thought it was. A lot of numbers, a lot of talk back and forth. It was very good because that again goes back into how we're scoring the condition base life of everything. Obviously, next steps now, the CMS, we've got to go live. We're not fully there, we're just about there, and there's going to be a whole report coming out within the end of the month.
yeah.
We'll be passing that along, so it'll be very helpful. That'll show again how we scored all the items, all the information that we have. This will lead then into the capital improvements, develop a risk and condition base, so that way we know where we need to start putting money into. We don't want to be blindsided by anything as best we can. And this will also adjust PM schedules because the data gets validated. We have to understand it and say why it's working.
Question on, is the capital improvement schedule part of your predicted maintenance strategies?
It will be part of it, yes. It's, the capital improvement schedule is taking all this into consideration, so it'll when we go through that process, it'll play a part in it.
Because it's the predictive maintenance that I think we would be interested in from a budget standpoint.
Okay, yeah.
In enough time prior to our annual plan and our annual budget, so it can be taken into consideration.
Yeah, we're looking at integrating what they come up with into the 3 pages of plan improvements that we had identified from 5 or 6 years ago, the major study that was undertaken there. Now when they're looking at the details, so it's a really good 5-year update of all that information and then present that to the committee.
I really like the idea of a predictive maintenance schedule. I mean, we all do PMs, you know, we oil a switch, but predictive maintenance indicates a certain amount of thought to what's going to happen next year or the year after or beyond. And that's nice.
Yeah, and that's part of the whole maintenance scheduling is the PM, but then the predictive maintenance as well. So part of the pieces of equipment that we consider critical are ones that we would want to perform predictive maintenance on. The baseline condition assessment really is just going to help with sitting down for future capital planning, things that we could talk with Pat, Phil, and Dick about.
Good, thank you.
I don't know if I heard you correctly on the previous screen there. The 835 assets that were identified?
Yes.
You said there were actually, initially there were 400 and...
400 and change, yeah.
So that was from when we had it, right? What did we miss? I guess is more.
400 and.
Well, no, but I'm saying, does that impact anything?
It may not have, you may not have missed anything, it's just, sometimes it's the way we list the equipment.
Or maybe the way you classified it as?
Correct.
Or how deep you want to drill down,
Yeah.
granular.
Didn't mean you missed it, it's just
Pipe
we
here,
break it down.
motor, lining.
Right.
I don't know if we had more assets to put on our books.
You
Well,
may.
what-
There's a whole spreadsheet that we'll be providing that will have all this information on it, and we may have drilled deeper.
I mean, so that's really where I'm kind of going with it is.
We might list one object, they might break it down into 5 separate components.
Okay, all right, that makes.
All right, process optimization. This is the fun stuff.
I thought that was the beer tax.
So we started off working with our technical services. We wanted to look at some initial things we could try and change coming in, some long-term things. So this is phase 1 and 2. We started working with our jar tests. We have alum currently. We're interested to see if Packle could come into play to take over for the alum. We did jar tests. We worked with a number of companies, came in, representatives. We tried everything we could. As of now, it still shows that alum is the most cost-effective, the most overall effective chemical we can use instead of Packle. Next came the clarifier rinses, and we did profiles. We also did profiles of the backwashes for the filters, so I'm going to jump to the next page and come back a couple times. But what we found was for the clarifiers, we could adjust the flows and the times. So we could increase the flow while we're cleaning these clarifiers, yet decreasing the time, and we'd actually save water because we'd be getting the clarifiers cleaner quicker. So I'm just jumping here and kind of show you, this is a filter, but it's the same principle. It starts off pretty dirty, we're cleaning it. Once we get down to our recommended line, we use 10 for now, you see that it's actually here in almost half the time that we've been running these for. So in theory, we should be able to cut them down, maybe increase the water a little bit, just to verify that we're getting down to that number. And then obviously we do some sampling, we test it. If it doesn't work, we put it back, all that. But the theory's there where decrease time, increase water, and we're saving, which is good.
How much water?
It's 100,000 gallons, 100,000 gallons per day, and that's just the clarifiers. We're also looking at the filters. That's going to take a little more work. We need some more kind of safety checks there, a little more programming. We need to look into that a little more. But there is a possibility that for every wash, we could save 140,000 gallons of water. So again, that's water that we're not treating above and beyond. That's water that's not being wasted. That's the water that's not being put out to the lagoons. And that's water that we're saving here on chemicals.
If I could just clarify, the clarifier rinse savings, we've actually already implemented that. Talked with Phil, implemented that. But the filter backwash, the data shows. So we're still calling it possible. We got to transfer the SCADA system over to really change some times. And you do need to be careful when you put a filter back online. You do get some spikes in turbidity, and we can't have a violation from that. We don't have a filter to waste option here, which most plants do that can do that, to not have that spike. And but sometimes you can program just some downtimes, like a half an hour downtime after a backwash before you turn it back on to really keep those spikes down. But the main thing is the savings of the water. It means that less chemicals we're adding to that water, because there's chemicals added to that water that we waste, and that's more water that's available for you to sell. Right? Good.
Then moving on, we have the hydroturbines. We have one in the plant, which is upstream, and we have one downstream. We had, again, technical service come in. They did audits on these. The downstream, there's a slight decrease they found. However, based on what their findings were, there's really nothing we can do to change it to make it any better. It's still it's optimized for what it is, which is fine. It works great. Upstream, no decrease in efficiency. So again, we're not touching it. Everything came out great. So I mean, these things have been running for years, and they're still running great, which is awesome for us. It saves money, it saves electricity. And then SOPs. We had 28 SOPs prepared and 19 process control guidelines. Again, it's just saying we came in and made sure that everyone knows how to do everything here. The standard operating procedures, they're very important. Safety, regulations, all that fun stuff. Here's a profile again we went over just to say, hey, 10 minutes, we get it down to 5 minutes, if we can. And then again, we gotta test everything to verify. This is phase 3, so this is kind of stuff we're looking into. We did a carbon pilot project, working with Phil in the lab, data analysis, interpretation. So there may be more testing, there may not be. We've been working with normal carbon versus reactivated carbon for our filters. We need to find out what's going to work, what's more cost effective, what's best at removing everything we need removed in the long term. So that's something that's ongoing right now. Beneficial reuse. Currently our sludge that's coming from the filters, the clarifiers, it's being hauled away. So we were able to find someone in Poland, which is down the street from us. They want it, it's great. Right now we're working with the DEC in a lab, which we just contracted with to do all the testing required. Once that's taken care of, the DEC signs off on it, which we're hoping they do based on prior numbers that we had from years back when there was testing. We should be good to go. And again, material, sand and gravel, want our stuff, which is great. Further conversations, orthophosphate. So based on the lead and copper, we're not going to move ahead on this yet, but it's something that we're talking about internally. It's just another corrosion control option, ways that we can lower other chemicals while introducing orthophosphate to really do the same thing that we've been doing, keeping everything, keeping all the lines corrosion controlled. And lastly, the hypochlorite. Right now, again, we have gas chlorine. We're looking to move into hypochlorite. It's safer and it's easier to handle in the long term. Here's the end. One last note. I just want to say that the staff that came over has been awesome. Great to work with, tons of knowledge, and I know that they're pretty happy because they told me that every day, and it's nice to hear. And it's been awesome working with Mohawk Valley and all you guys. So I just want to say thanks for that.
Thank you. Thank you. John, can we go back one slide for a quick second? I just want to point out the top bullet points on the carbon. We've been using what they call virgin carbon. So every year we have to change out the filter beds with brand new carbon. And this year's contract is about $950,000 roughly.
Yes.
So about $950,000 a year to change out all 4 beds with brand new carbon. Once the carbon gets clogged up, it loses the efficiency, it gets taken out. That's why we put new stuff in. But when they take it out, it can be put back in a blast furnace and they burn everything out of it, and then it becomes regenerated carbon or recycled carbon. What they're looking at and working with Phil and others is if we can use that regenerated carbon instead. Does it last as long? Does you get a long run out of it before it clogs up? Is it just as efficient? But the savings could be significant. It could be 20 to 25%, maybe even more, by switching to recycled carbon. And so that's what they're trying to find out with that. And we could lower that cost by $150,000 to $200,000, maybe even more, if it works. It'll require health department approval and everything else. But that's a very significant project that they're working on.
Are we doing all 4 beds each year?
Pardon?
Are we
We
doing
do all 4
Yes.
beds each year, so we're evaluating a couple of different options, and Bob Rasco, who's their water quality manager essentially, we've been working with Bob to kind of look at the reactivated carbon and also to look at the timing of the replacements too. So perhaps looking at replacing all the filters in July is not the best option. Perhaps we need to stagger that, and there may be some beneficial advantages to doing that maybe 2 times a year, or 3 times a year, and doing 2 and 2 or 1 filter a quarter. So we're evaluating that too. We have some preliminary data that we had done several years ago that said this is a viable option.
That's what I remember.
Yeah, but we needed to really revisit it and reestablish that data set. So we just finished off the pilot section. We hope to have a memo to the Department of Health by the end of the month.
It also seems like the cost is a little less than it was when we first started talking about it, when we first stared with the carbon. Because $1 million.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Well, so we've
it's not
done
too bad.
we've done a lot of work over the last 10 years, and even since 2007, I think, is when we first started to look at granular activated carbon. We've looked at different types of carbon, right? We started off looking at a bituminous-based carbon. Now we're using a lignite-based carbon, so it's a little cheaper, but you can't regenerate that. So now we're back to a bituminous carbon. but it's actually a different product than existed 10 years ago. So,
It also takes a ton of heat to create it, so it's very energy intensive. So as the price of energy goes up and down, it's reflected somewhat in the pricing of carbon.
And that's been pretty good for us in the last.
So, you know, if energy prices are down a little bit, we'll probably see a little bit of savings on that cost.
How many times could you regenerate the carbon there?
it really depends. You can, probably a safe number is 5 to 7 years, but every year that carbon is regenerated, you have to apply some amount of virgin carbon, they call it makeup carbon, to kind of fill up what you lost during the reactivation process. So I would say 5 to 7 years. You can sometimes stretch it out to 10, but remember, you're adding 10 to 20% every year of the virgin product, so you kind of keep that cycle going.
Plus you got the cost of regeneration.
Right, well, we're not talking about regenerating on the site right now. We're talking about removing it and having regenerated carbon brought in.
So even with that makeup carbon, right, you're still looking at potentially a 20 to 30% savings. And of course, based on how their procurement practices are for a longer term contract, perhaps that we can, see an even greater savings down the road.
Have we been getting credit on the ones that we've been sending back to use them? Seriously,
I think it's
before
charge.
10 cents a bottle.
So no, so the carbon that we've used prior to this year, for the last 3 or 4 years, is a lignite-based carbon, which really has no value. It goes to the landfill.
Okay.
So the opportunity with the bituminous-based carbon, one, is you have the opportunity to regenerate it. 2, you're also literally decreasing your carbon footprint. It's very green to do this, to regenerate it. So it's definitely worth pursuing.
Good.
Will the regenerated stuff last for a year?
Yeah, it will. So, interesting thing, without getting into too much detail, is that the carbon that we use, we really only get, and all of our studies have indicated, we only get 90 to 120 days of really effective removals, which really gets us through what we call the time of the year where we have the most concern, right? Temperature's up and the water, the time that it's in the system is up, right, in the winter, or in the summer. So the opportunity for us to use the regenerated carbon isn't going to decrease that effective period of 90 to 120 days. Once temperatures drop, you don't have those formations that are happening in the water so much. So.
And some other cost savings thing too is we use our buying power through Suez to purchase a few items for the authority, chemicals, some other things.
That helps too. Any questions?
I have one very quick one. You talked about the hydro generation that we do there. Is there any possibility, or would you suggest more, that we generate more, that we have another turbine?
That didn't come up in the study.
Yeah. Well, that's really a hydraulic question.
Yeah.
Do you have enough time to spare without stalling the plant out? That's really something that they...
Yeah, the turbines in there right now are designed around a 27 million gallon per day throughput, and we're doing maybe 19, 18 to 20. So there's some additional capacity with the turbines we have there to generate more electricity if we were to put more water through it. The construction of the new pipeline, however, will increase the efficiency because we're going to use less of that energy from Hinckley to get the water to the plant. That energy is now available to generate electricity in the turbines. And actually, up until around 30, 32 MGD, we're probably still good with the turbine that's in there as far as efficiency. We have looked at other sites throughout the system on the distribution side, over in Maynard where we have major regulators, and a Deerfield reservoir. And we actually have one at Deerfield we use to operate a recirculation pump at the reservoir. So we did a study a few years ago on other sites, as well as updating the turbines on the raw water side. So the possibility is there. We've got to make more water, sell more water.
I think one last thing I'd like to say too on the optimization efforts, those are just the initial things that we're working on with the authority. That doesn't mean when we're done with those, we're done optimizing. I think we're going to continue with our partnership and our relationship here. That's one of our key things. That keeps us competitive in the marketplace is looking for optimization for all of our systems. So.
I would just remind the board that when we got into this, Pat and I both decided that we really needed to focus on our risk reduction, right, and about our resiliency going forward. And from our conversations and our interactions over the first 6 months, we're headed in that direction. You can see some of the work that they put together. So I'm happy to see the report come to the board.
And I'll say too, I think it's been a very successful relationship so far. Everything that we came to this board hoping to accomplish by making this change is going exactly the way we had hoped, and I'm sure will continue. So I have no second guessing in my mind at all about making this change. I think it's been very, very beneficial for us.
Anything else, anybody?
Any reporting requirements to Phil or to you?
Yeah, they produce a monthly operations report, and Phil really talks to John pretty much every day. So he's aware of everything that's going on, but all the data they're compiling is always available for Phil and others to look at.
And we have a Tuesday morning operations meeting. John comes down to
Yeah.
that every Tuesday, meets with the rest of the
John
operations.
meets with staff down here.
Yeah.
But all the reporting that goes in the health department goes through Phil first.
Correct.
So, everything they're compiling, the last stop before it goes to the state is at Phil's office.
And the SCADA system they're tied into, so.
Yeah, they're migrating it over to something that's more universal throughout their company, so that all the eyes and ears throughout Suez at other locations will be able to access and see the plant just the same way they see other plants. So it's to their benefit to have the SCADA system consistent with what they're using company-wide.
Sure, but that'll be reported into our SCADA system as well, right?
Yeah.
Anything else?
There was a good piece Sunday morning, Phil, with the water treatment plant.
Oh, yeah, with Central New York.
Oh, you saw that? That was actually filmed about a year ago.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good
job.
Any old business? Any new business?
Mr. Chairman, just a quick
Oh, yeah, old
update.
and new.
No.
Just check.
You moved right on,
I
so
know.
I jumped right.
I tried to go quickly.
I know you did. This won't take long. Just to say that our third and final year with BST, our current external accounting, independent accounting firm, is this year. They've already sent us their letter describing what their approach is for this year's audit, and the date that they expect to commence field work be here is March 5th. So we're moving along in this year's budget. I've also asked Jim if he could query other water systems, maybe other utility systems in New York about a length of terms of contracts with audit firms. We've been using 3 years. Is 3 years the norm? Anybody doing 5? Anybody doing 1, 2? What's the norm? When we bring back the discussion that we'll ultimately have sometime later this year, telling you what our plan is for the audit after 2018, we'll have more information on what other people are doing. Which is why I suggest you might want to combine a survey here, with what he's doing and what we were talking about earlier. But
Wasn't there a requirement out there from GAP that tells you how long?
Every 3 years.
Every 3?
as long as we change
just
the
rotate
partner,
the partner.
we can go to
Right.
longer or shorter.
Well, I mean, do we have any issues with this firm?
No, personally, I'm very pleased individually with them, and reports have been fine. They're very very thoughtful in their comments. They're giving the board, I think, and the staff the information it needs. They're a good firm.
Anything else, Bruce?
Nope.
Dave?
Yeah, just real quick, this is a nice letter that's a pacemaker, and I just wanted to reiterate,
Yeah.
because, a lot of the folks go out there, the cold weather, and they're out there doing this, we take it a lot for granted, but I know I can speak firsthand. The fire department, seeing these people out fixing hydrants when it's hardly the best of weather conditions, and they're out there and they try very hard and do a lot of good work, so I think it's very nice that they were recognized here in this article.
That was great. And Dave has first-hand experience being a long-time volunteer in New Hartford.
40 years.
That's generous.
Anything else? That March date, Sue,
19.
we're still scheduled to be here, even though Pat will be in Washington. Don't forget your waiters, and we're adjourned.